Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about some rookie sleepers that you just don't want to miss out on.
Hike!
In this episode, Joe and I are going to provide 3 players each. These are rookie sleepers that you really want to avoid missing out on them. Joe, why don't you talk about the first one? Who do you got?
Yeah, first sleeper I'm going to talk about is going to be quarterback Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, who got drafted in the 3rd round by the Seattle Seahawks. And I know the big knock on Jalen Milroe was, accuracy, and he's obviously got the ability with the 4.37 40 time that he ran. Super athletic. I think he's got the highest ceiling, of any of these quarterbacks in this draft class, especially when it comes to fantasy, with how fast he was able to run. But one thing I do like is I think he's willing to put the work in to become better, as improve that accuracy, similarly to what we saw with, Josh Allen. That was his biggest knock coming into the league as well. Put the work in several off seasons, got better, and obviously he's one of the top dynasty quarterbacks to have right now. Not to say that Jalen Milroe is going to turn into Josh Allen, but I do like that there's a report out there saying that he's using the same VR technology to Jaden Daniels, who Jaden Daniels credit a lot of that to for his rookie success. And then also working with Jordan Palmer, who's obviously a notable quarterback trainer out there. And once again, just meeting with him, the VR stuff, the fact that he's putting the work in, everything out of rookie minicamp is just how hard of a worker this guy is. And I think as long as he's willing to work on this craft, he could really reach that ceiling here.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick because he's a guy who had a lot of hype during the rookie draft process. Went a little bit later than we expected. We really didn't know where he was going to go, but there was rumors. Quarterbacks always, they end up pushing them up the draft. Oh, he's going to be a first-round pick. He's going to be a first-round pick. The Giants want him. Bee-ba-boo, right? That's what happens. Well, he went to the Seahawks, which I actually think is a great landing spot for him. You got to remember, and I just thought about this recently, Mike McDonald's the head coach. Where does he come from? He comes from Baltimore, where Lamar Jackson, was a quarterback who, in his early stages, I believe he was kind of involved more in like package type stuff before he eventually became the starting quarterback for the team. I could see Milroe kind of being involved in packages at first with Sam Darnold there. And depending on how Sam Darnold does, I don't think it's out of the question that Jalen Milroe ends up taking over maybe at the end of the year or possibly next season. Even though Sam Darnold signed that huge contract with the Seahawks, if you look at the details, it's effectively a 1-year deal. Seahawks could ultimately decide to cut bait from Sam Darnold. He's no longer there. So, will Milroe get some packaged plays? He's obviously such a dynamic runner, probably as good, if not better, than Lamar Jackson, which is saying something. So ultimately, I'm with you. I think he's a very interesting sleeper pick. You've got that dual threat ability. Anytime you got a quarterback that's got that dual threat ability, that's money when it comes to, their upside in dynasty. So I like the choice by you. Well, let's see if you like my first choice. And that's going to be running back Jordan James being drafted in the 5th round by the San Francisco 49ers. Joe, every year we are on high alert for when the San Francisco 49ers are inevitably going to draft a running back. Well, it just so happens they did, right? They draft the running back out of Oregon in the 5th round. And he's a guy who, somebody even thought maybe he'd be a 2nd or 3rd round player. Was behind the likes of the running back out of Tampa Bay, who everybody loves, which is Bucky Irving. But he was able to, have his first crack at being the starter this past year. He's a great zone runner. I think he's got some great bursts, great receiving back. So at the end of the day, I don't know if he'll necessarily – you obviously have Christian McCaffrey there, and they've got Isaac Guerrero, who, can he stay healthy? So I think it's the type of thing where if McCaffrey, the wheels fall off on him, and Guerrero's not all that good, we'll see. You see a guy like Jordan Mason, another Jordan, all of a sudden came out of nowhere and, was so great for that team. Maybe this isn't much of a sleeper for those out there because it's a San Francisco running back and it's a Shanahan system. But to me, because of his later draft capital, he may get overlooked. I felt like it was worthy enough to make him a mention here.
Yeah, no, I do like this pick from you as well. I know when we were putting together rookie running back rankings video. He's a guy that kind of caught my eye watching the tape of him. Really liked, his running style and different abilities. And of course, San Francisco 49ers is always a great landing spot for these running backs. And, to me, they do it again and find a guy with Jordan James late in the draft there. And, as we know with the Shanahan running system, that offensive line and that tree, it doesn't matter. You put these guys behind and put them in that system, get them behind that offense line, and they excel.
Well, and look at his stats too, right? I mean, he had over 1,200 yards rushing and 15 rushing touchdowns. Back in 2023, his sophomore season, he had 11 touchdowns. And the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, he was giving them fits that game. So ultimately, I think he's got a lot of potential. Hopefully he ends up, I would think he's going to make the roster. You never know with those late round picks. 5th, 6th, 7th round picks are always kind of on the bubble. But I think he's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, I do agree. He definitely has a lot of upside, especially being there in San Fran.
All right, Joe, who is your second rookie sleeper that they better not miss out on?
Yeah, so apparently I like the Seattle Seahawks draft here, as I'm going to go with Torrey Horton Jr. out of Colorado State, who the Seahawks were able to grab in the 5th round. Unfortunately, this past season he was just hampered by injuries, so didn't get to see him. Or else, I think had he not had the injury, you would have seen Torrey Horton get taken earlier in drafts. He guy pre-injury said he would run the 40 about 4.3 speed. Ended up running the 40 time at a 4.41. But I just think he's got that explosive speed, dynamic player, guy that can definitely get you those house calls and take screens to the distance. And I think he goes to a nice landing spot here with the Seahawks, as they don't really have too much in the receiving room. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba's there. They bring over Cooper Kupp, but they really needed another guy. And I think Torrey Horton Jr. is an interesting guy that they bring into the receiving room. We'll see what happens with Sam Darnold. He's only there for a year here, but
it's a multi-year deal. It's just they can get out of it in 1 year,
right? But that's I look at that as
you're already on the Milrow train here. You're already thinking that Darnold's on his way out.
Yeah, I think it could be. I mean, look. There's a reason that these teams have the outs, and we've seen it before. So Sam Darnold possibly only a year. We'll see what happens with Jalen Milrow down the road here.
Yeah, Torrey Horton Jr. Was an interesting addition, especially considering that you think about a guy like Cooper Kupp who hasn't been able to stay healthy. So if he goes down, there's that opportunity for that second opportunity. They got Bobo, right? He's kind of shown flashes. I want to say, didn't they also sign Valdez-Scantling as well, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, but he's a guy who's been all over the place from team to team to team. He's a speed guy who will stretch the field, but he's got butter for hands. I mean, the guy feels like he drops passes all the time. So I think based on his pedigree, he should have a good opportunity.
Definitely, and it just he was the top option there at CSU, and he was a guy that he racked up a lot of stats during his collegiate career. 265 receptions, 3,615 receiving yards, and 27 touchdowns for Horton Jr.
That's pretty good. So I'm going to talk about a wide receiver in my second one. I'm surprised you're not talking about this guy. And that's going to be wide receiver Pat Bryant for your Denver Broncos, Joe. Broncos ended up taking him a little bit higher than most thought. He got taken with the 74th overall pick in the 3rd round. A lot of people were mocking him more in the 5th round or possibly even the 4th round. And primarily that was due to his 40-yard dash time of a 4.61. I know you could throw that out the window, and so will Sean Payton. He's looking at based purely on what he sees in the tape and based on what he's seeing with his own 2 eyes. At the end of the day, he's great hands catcher, great route running ability, just a smart player. So I think, and interestingly enough, you have to take what Sean Payton has to say sometimes with a grain of salt. But I'll take this one to the bank. If he's describing him as Michael Thomas, I'm listening a little bit closer because ultimately, look at that receiving room. Cortland Sutton's not getting any younger. You've got a guy like Marvin Mims. He's a great guy who stretches the field. But who else is going to fill out that room? They've got Devon Bailey. He, was a later round pick. He showed some flashes of consistency. And you had a guy like Troy Franklin, a guy who played with Bo Nix, but he never really panned out either. So Pat Bryant really has an opportunity to kind of step in to be that guy. Don't know if it'll happen right away. Maybe there's some promise that him and Bo Nix can kind of develop a rapport. But I'm excited about this pick for your Broncos here, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's better that you talk about these Bronco picks, Steve, and then you won't call me a homer, and then I still have the opportunity to talk about these guys without all that additive at the beginning here. But yeah, I mean, Pat Bryant definitely is an interesting player. I think he does have potentially an immediate role in the offense, just because if you look at that playoff game against the Bills, just time and time again, nobody was coming through in the clutch on those big plays in the third downs. A lot of drop passes in that game, and Pat Bryant, that's what he's known for. He excels at creating separation at the slant routes. I think that's why he's getting those Michael Thomas comparisons. And then he's got the yak potential. But he's just been a really reliable hands catcher, and the moment hasn't been too big for him. He's a guy that's gotten 3 game-winning touchdowns this past year. So I think just that clutch factor, and just when the Broncos need to play on third down, they've lacked to have that guy with like the confidence to go ahead and make that play. And I think that's where Pat Bryant should really excel. And that's where he could have an immediate role.
Those are some good points there, Joe. I like that. How about we go to your last rookie sleeper that people should not be avoiding?
Yeah, on this one with the running back Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn. The Los Angeles Rams took him in the 4th round, 117th pick of the draft. And it's interesting. I know people are going to say, well, they got Kyron Williams, drafted Blake Corum there last year as well. But Kyron Williams, if you look at it last year, like he just solely relies on like a ton of volume. Yes, and he does get it, but he just lacks so many explosive plays, and the amount of like yards per rush wasn't there. And I think that's where Hunter comes in, where Sean McVay might want a guy with a change of pace and has that explosive opportunity, a guy that ran that 4.4 40. He creates those explosive plays. So I do think there is a role as change of pace running back for the Rams. You did see Corum did get involved a little bit more than I wanted to see as a Kyron Williams owner, but I think Corum at the end of the day is just that similar guy to Kyron Williams. He doesn't have that same explosiveness, but Jarquez Hunter, I think, just creates that extra dynamic in his game with that breakout potential, and could carve himself out a role in his rookie year.
I guess, with that being said, with this pick, we're not going to be doing a loser episode as far as who we thought lost. I think Kyron Williams is probably one of the number 1 losers in this, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, he is in a contract year to boot. So if he doesn't go back with the Rams, where is he going to go? And is someone really going to give him the opportunity he's been given with the Rams? I don't think so. But I did want to ask you, what does this say about Blake Corum, though? A guy I know you know him better than most, as a Michigan Wolverine fan, him playing there. I think we had expected maybe that he would have a more relevant rookie year. He really didn't.
Yeah. Where I still think he still is a nice change of pace to Jarquez Hunter as well. So where I know Kyron Williams only has a year left, I wouldn't expect the Rams to bring Kyron Williams back. So I think that's where it comes in. I think Blake Corum would essentially kind of fill that Kyron Williams role. And then Hunter is still there, for being able to create those big plays and those explosive plays that the Rams really have lacked from that running back position.
Do you think it becomes a 3-headed monster then between the 3 of them? Or do you think it's still Kyron's show for this year, and then after that it'll be the Corum and Hunter combo? Like, what do you
That's
expect?
kind of what I envision. I think with the last year of his contract here, I think it still could be the Kyron Williams show. Obviously, Corum will probably get mixed in, but Hunter might just get mixed in more, just with, like I said, McVay probably wanting to put extra strain on the defense and get a real difference maker that got some speed with those explosive plays as well.
Yeah, if I had, this is a tangent, we won't be on this for long, but if I had Kyron Williams right now, I'd be trying to trade him for all I can get right now. I think that, right, this is his ceiling. This is the peak value. He's still going to have to earn it to get that contract. So I think he'll be motivated. But in the dynasty perspective, I don't know what's his longevity moving forward. I would definitely move off him if I can, especially in a rookie draft class like this with all the running backs that they have. It's a great opportunity to get rid of him and replace him with somebody new.
Yeah, I would agree. I think definitely he had a good year. He's got good stats from last year, a lot of touchdowns, and this is a prime maximize on that value and see what you can get for him.
All right, so on our last player here, I'm going to be talking about as the must-draft Dynasty rookie sleeper, and that's going to be running back Brashard Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know what you might be saying when you hear this from me is that, well, don't you know he's a 7th-round pick? Yes, I do, but also Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th-round pick, so let's not forget about that. Brashard Smith brings a whole different element to this backfield that they just simply don't have. People were getting all excited about Rezamet when he was, that rugby player that came in and what he'd be bringing. Well, this guy is much more of a threat. Now, who knows? This is a sleeper episode. He may or may not make the roster. He is a 7th-round pick. I get that. But he had a 4.39 40-yard dash. That was 3rd fastest among all the running backs, who performed that at the combine. He's a receiver who converted to a running back. So this guy's got great receiving skills. I mean, he lines up in the slot. He does, not typical running back routes, right? He's able to, juke out the defense. They don't even know what's coming with this guy. So not only that, but he's got great bursts as well. You don't have that type of, breakaway speed with Pacheco or Kareem Hunt or even Elijah Mitchell. So to me, he's a guy I'm very curious about how things are going to turn out for him because the Chiefs have not been afraid ever since they whiffed on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They've not been afraid to kind of use these middling late-round running backs as their starters. So does this guy get some action in the preseason? Does his name start to get more hype around him? And does he get more involved? Pacheco still doesn't even look like himself coming back from the injury. So I know he's a 7th-round pick. He's somewhat of a deep sleeper, but he's got some traits. And I think Mahomes is kind of missing that. I think he kind of needs more of that receiving type back who can, because he doesn't have it. He can't, there's no real check down option for him, in that offense. So I think he provides that. So I like Brashard Smith's upside here.
Yeah, he definitely has an opportunity. Like you said, brings in a skill set that isn't already on the roster as well. I mean, really, the check down has been Isaiah Pacheco, who's decent receiver, but like you said, he doesn't have the, when he goes out, you put him out wide, like linebackers aren't fearing that they can't keep up with Isaiah Pacheco. He doesn't have that, elite speed or anything.
Well, he doesn't have the acceleration either, right? I mean, he's a pure locomotive. Once he starts getting the speed coming, then he's a train coming right at you. But from when he gets it to go, he doesn't have that quick speed.
No, it's funny. Fantasy footballers always say he runs like he's angry at the ground, and it truly is like a accurate statement. Just it's pretty crazy to watch him run. It's an interesting running style that he has. But I definitely like the upside with Brashard Smith, and I think with his receiving ability and just a guy that can create those explosive plays that the Chiefs offense has truly been just missing as a whole, more explosive plays. And I think that's where he could have an immediate role in bringing those.
Well, let's not forget too, right? He's, like I mentioned earlier, just a little bit earlier, he's a converted receiver to a running back. I think a lot of teams might have been scared off by the fact of this guy a tweener. Do we know how to use him? Well, Andy Reid's one of the most creative play designers out there. So, they get a guy like him in the 7th round. Now he can be used as a chess piece for them, decide how they want to deploy him. Other teams, they won't know how to or don't even know what to do with him. So to me, he goes to a great landing spot.
That's interesting. I would have thought Tyrone Tracy would have helped that a little bit just because he was also converted wide receiver, had a pretty good rookie year with the Giants, looked good. So I would have thought that might have maybe helped Brashard Smith's, draft capital, but clearly it didn't.
Yeah, and that's a great example, right? A lot of people compared him to Tyrone Tracy because of what you're saying, a converted receiver to a running back, and he did do pretty well. Obviously, they added Cam Scatabo, so they wanted to add a little bit, more diversity to that room. But ultimately, worked out really nicely for them, and I think it could work out nicely for the Chiefs too. I hope it doesn't for the Bills' sake, but
Yeah, well, I'm also a Broncos fan. I hope it doesn't, but once again, it just seems like one of those, late round gems that the Chiefs have seemed to find here.
So that does it for this episode. We went through 6 must-draft rookie sleepers. You don't want to avoid missing out on these guys. You got to go get them in your rookie drafts. You can probably get them late and stash them and hope they turn into something. If you haven't done so already, check out one of our most recent episodes where we went through the top winners for fantasy football due to the NFL draft. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.